This highlighted area shows the Russian offensive aimed at capturing occupied Ukraine up to Pokrovsk, a small town of great importance. However, they failed to stop the Ukrainian counteroffensive and subsequently started attacking from the Kursk region. The Russians also failed to counter the Ukrainian strategy, which involved using the tactic of concentration of force, a strategy developed by Napoleon. The Ukrainians targeted the weakest points, destroying critical infrastructure such as bridges necessary for reinforcements, using TACMS missiles capable of traveling over 109 miles, which is around 177 kilometers. More details all in the video ahead. The distance from Ukraine to Moscow by air is approximately 480 kilometers, which is around 298 miles. For comparison, this is almost the same as the distance from Washington to New York. Ukraine launched 45 drones over Russian territory, including 23 in the border region of Bryansk and 6 over the Belgorod region. 11 drones managed to reach Moscow, the capital of Russia, but were destroyed by the Russian anti-air defense system. These low-budget drones shouldn't even be able to penetrate a few miles into Russian territory, yet here they are, and Moscow proves a failure to intercept them at the initial stage. Failure 1. The Russians experienced a complete intelligence failure regarding the Ukrainians. For the last 2 months, Ukrainian troops have been slowly amassing. To avoid suspicion, they began adding troops in small groups over time. Ukraine knew it could not compete head-on with the massive Russian army in its backyard, so instead of launching a direct attack, they adopted a different approach. This gradual buildup allowed them to remain undetected. However, Russian bloggers were already reporting the military buildup to Russian generals. Despite these reports, the activity was dismissed as a deception meant to draw Russian forces away from Pokrovsk into Ukraine. Now, speaking of strategy, let's take a look at how they managed to pull this off. The Ukrainians employed one of the most tried and tested strategies: concentration of force. Given that the Ukrainian army was much smaller than the Russian army, only about 10% of its size, they had to be strategic. Approximately 800,000 Russian soldiers were stationed along the borders, waiting for the right moment to launch an offensive and crush Ukraine. So the Ukrainians counterattacked and identified a weak spot in the Kursk region, mobilized all their troops to execute a flanking maneuver, and focused on taking control of the single checkpoint. After securing it, they regrouped with their current forces and mechanized armor to re-engage and eliminate the remaining checkpoints. They repeated this process over and over until all Russian pockets of resistance were destroyed. It's a clever strategy that made their army appear much larger, just like what some of the greatest commanders in history have done, also known as defeat in detail. This is how Napoleon's strategy essentially worked. Let's consider a scenario where you have only 10,000 men to fight against a formidable enemy boasting 20,000 well-trained soldiers armed to their teeth. His response to such a daunting scenario was not mere recklessness. It was a calculated approach known as defeat in detail. This method involved the tactical advancement and division of forces with cannons, a hallmark of Napoleon's military brilliance. In response, the enemy mirrored this dispersion, scattering their troops and fortifying each town. In warfare, especially as the attacking force, numerical superiority is the linchpin of potential victory. A direct mass assault on all fronts would yield unfavorable odds of 2,500 French soldiers versus 5,000 opposing forces. Napoleon's mastery unveiled itself in a subtle, yet pivotal maneuver on the brink of battle. He orchestrated a concentration of forces, strategically thinning the front lines while targeting a singular, ideally the weakest point of attack to annihilate the enemy. The moment of contact with the adversary became an orchestration of concentrated force. Due to the enemy's dispersed arrangement, they set themselves up for individual defeat, allowing Napoleon to engage only a fraction of their forces, not the entire army. Central to the success of this strategy was the swift maneuverability of capable forces, enabling them to outmaneuver the enemy before their strategy was unveiled. Speed was the catalyst for surprise, an essential element ensuring victory. Napoleon's campaigns stand as a testament to his consistent triumph over superior forces. To better understand the strategy, let's look at the numbers from each country. Russia had 1,320,000 active soldiers ready for combat, supported by a reserve force of 2 million. Supplementing this core military strength were 250,000 paramilitary units, adding a formidable layer of defense to the nation. Meanwhile, Ukraine maintained a strong military presence with 900,000 active soldiers. In reserve, 1,200,000 citizens stood ready to defend their homeland, bolstered by 100,000 paramilitary units, all prepared for the challenges ahead. Now let's take a look at the air forces of both nations. Russia's dominance in the skies was evident with a total of 4,000 aircraft, including 1,500 helicopters. Among its aerial arsenal were 809 fighters and 730 dedicated attack aircraft designed to project power over vast distances. Russia also commanded 559 attack helicopters and 552 trainers to keep their air force sharp, along with 453 transport aircraft ensuring that mobility and logistics were never an issue. Ukraine's air force, though significantly smaller, was no less committed. With 321 total aircraft, including 130 helicopters, Ukraine's air power was built on resilience. The fleet included 72 fighters and 30 dedicated attack aircraft, as well as 33 helicopters. Supporting this aerial effort were 73 trainers, ensuring their pilots were well prepared, and 24 transport aircraft, capable of responding quickly when needed. When it comes to mechanized warfare, Ukraine has approximately 1,117 infantry fighting vehicles, 368 main battle tanks including M1 Abrams German Leopard 2 and British Challenger tanks, and 268 armored personnel carriers. This is almost 1 versus 17 in comparison to Russia's mechanized vehicles. It has 17,677 infantry fighting vehicles, 17,370 main battle tanks, and 14,991 armored personnel carriers. While Ukraine has almost no navy or warship, but it has sea drones like this one, while Russia has around 598 warships scattered all over the world. Furthermore, Russia is one of the 9 nations worldwide that possess nuclear weapons. As of early 2022, Russia held the largest stockpile of nuclear warheads globally, with a total of 5,977 units. This is failure 2. The second failure was Russia's inability to counter the TACMS missiles. This missile was designed to operate from 2 platforms, HIMARS and MLRS. HIMARS carries 1 missile pod, whereas the M270 carries a 2-section pods. Let's explore the basic tactics and maneuvers involved in launching this missile. Step 1. The Lockheed C-5 Galaxy aircraft transports the MLRS to a designated safe location. Once loaded, it can be rolled on and off this aircraft and becomes operational within 15 minutes of landing. Step 2. The crew unloads the MLRS along with the reloader and launchers. Step 3. The battalion travels nearly 70 kilometers or 40 miles closer to the front lines. Step 4. The control and command center designate targets to be destroyed. Step 5. In high-threat situations, the MLRS utilizes a shoot and scoot capability to enhance crew and platform survivability. The MLRS's capacity to deploy, shoot, move, and reload within minutes significantly impedes an enemy's ability to locate and target the firing platform. Step 6. The MLRS and HIMARS conduct reload operations using a reload arm assembly to reload missiles. Step 7. The fins inside the pod are always folded. Upon launch, they unfold to stabilize its path. For instance, a long-range missile might ascend to a predetermined height to adjust its course using GPS shortly after launch. In short, this is how the fins works. They can move left or right, just as shown in the visuals. These control surfaces are dictated by the inertial navigation system or military-grade GPS to turn the missiles to its designated target. Step 8. When it reaches its target, the impact sensor activates and triggers the warhead and produces a blast equivalent to 500 pounds of TNT, capable of damaging or destroying any bunker in the battlefield. These long-range tactical missiles are capable of targeting and destroying key infrastructure, such as bridges used for troop transport and other military targets. While according to the Ukrainian, they aim to create a buffer zone, so let's explore this further. Looking at the map, the red areas indicate Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine. The challenges faced by Russia can be broken down into several stages. Stage 1. This Russian territory, which includes areas within a 77 kilometers, which translates to approximately 47 miles range, where basic HIMARS missile systems can strike target, and these areas also fall within the Kursk region. Stage 2. These regions are around 170 kilometers, which is around 105 miles away from Ukraine, and where most of Russia's main air bases are located. Ukraine aims to create a buffer zone here, and this is where the TACMS missiles come into play and strike these targets. Stage 3. This covers a range of up to 300 kilometers, which is around 186 miles from Ukraine. This is where advanced TACMS can target and destroy high-value assets. However, it's uncertain if these advanced long-range missiles will be used, period. Now let us look at failure 3. Russia's third failure was the inability to maintain logistical support. For instance, this area is the focus of the Ukrainian offensive, and these key bridges are vital for Russian reinforcements. Ukraine anticipated this and used HIMARS tactical systems or Storm Shadow missiles to destroy these bridges, stalling Russian advancements. The Storm Shadow missile is a French and British low-observable, long-range, air-launched cruise missile. For now, we will look at the steps-by-steps format of how this works. Step 1. Aircraft releases the missile. Step 2. After a few seconds, the missile opens its two wings. Step 3. It first uses inertial and GPS for guidance at the first stage of the missile. Step 4. Drops to low cruising altitude and identifies its position using GPS, just like the animation shown here. As you can see, it flies below the radar and close to the hills and ground. Step 5. At the final stage, a thermal homing head and a terrain contour matching are used to guide the missiles. This is how it works. It uses the IR sensor imaging infrared seeker to track and process images, helping it glide to its target. Step 6. It climbs to a higher altitude. This helps the command and control to even monitor the target in the dark using a two-way data link. For the final maneuver, the nose cone is jettisoned to allow a high-resolution thermographic camera or infrared homing to observe the target area. The missile then tries to locate its target based on its preloaded data information. If all is approved, it then dives to destroy the target. We also make original engineering content, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos.